One of them was like, I want the comfy.
Good evening, everybody. It is November 16th, 2023. Thank you for attending. I'm going to call the school committee to order in open session. We have 5 of our 6 school committee members here this evening. Jamal, could you just start and we'll just go down and say who is here, please?
Jamal Say, school committee member.
Amy Zuccarello, school committee member.
Jong Yue, school committee member.
Lucia Sullivan, assistant superintendent.
Tony DiCollegiero, finance director.
Jill Geiser, superintendent.
Meg Moriarty, school committee member.
Amy Checkway, school committee member.
Thank you. And Jeff Liberty is unable to attend this evening. I want to thank, first of all, Belmont Media Center for recording this and broadcasting it. It will be available on demand also on their website this evening. Much appreciated on an off school committee typical meeting night. So thank you for that. As I just said, this is not a regular school committee meeting. Instead, it is a forum. So this evening, we will begin with a presentation from Jill Geiser, our superintendent. She will run through the presentation that she provided to the school committee on Tuesday night. And then I will open it up to questions and feedback about Jill's presentation and the fiscal year 25 draft proposed school budgets. This is not a time for school committee deliberation and discussion. Rather, we are here to listen to you. If a member has a point of clarification, however, please raise your hand and I am happy to acknowledge you and I will call on you. Jill, Dr. Geiser, and Tony DiCollegiero are here to respond to questions. If there are questions that we are unable to answer this evening, we will take it under consideration for a future meeting or at our budget summit and or respond directly at a later time if appropriate. Before we begin, I do want to repeat just a few things that I stated before the presentation on Tuesday evening. So first this evening, Jill is going to show her level services budget as a starting point. That shows the resources needed in fiscal year 25 to maintain the programming and services that we currently have in fiscal year 24. But as I stated on Tuesday, I do want to clarify that if an override is unsuccessful this spring.
Sorry. Just want to see
that. That's okay. I know I should know all this. Whenever I'm actually speaking as a school committee member, I always try to channel like all of our excellent performing arts educators and students at the high school because I always feel like they are so well spoken in front of everybody. So, but I'm not quite there the way that they are. So as I was stating about the fiscal year 25 level services budget is that if there is not a successful override in the spring, we will not be able to maintain all of the services and programming that you do see in that level services budget. Due to just simply our contractual obligations and inflation, we would need to make reductions to even the level services budget in case there is no override. So I just want people to not assume that the level services budget is actually the budget that we would have in the absence of an override. So after the starting point of the level services, Jill will show the draft proposed override budget. This is still based on many assumptions. We are still in November. This is very early compared to other years. We don't have a number to work with yet for the override, and it is certainly not our goal this evening to lock us into any number by showing this proposal. It is simply a starting point for discussions and questions, and even at the warrant committee meeting last night, they were talking about how important it is to the value of beginning some of these discussions, and so that's what we're trying to do here this evening. As a new superintendent, Jill is still engaging in her entry process planning and identifying areas for improvement in the district, which may mean actually restoring some previous reductions or adding one-time items like curriculum and critical positions. In the case of a successful override, it would mean program and service improvements for our students from where we are right now. So again, it is Jill's first draft of a proposed override budget. This is a very iterative process. I want to emphasize that there will be further discussion of this budget among the school committee after we hear feedback from the community and from other boards, and of course, once we have an override number. So tonight, Jill will also preview a draft of the non-override reductions. The school department is not recommending any reductions. I want to make that very clear. but rather the reductions are what they are prepared to implement if they have to, due to insufficient funds to pay for what the school district needs. And again, there are many assumptions in those no override budgets. So the other point that I want to make is that we are previewing fiscal year 25 budgets this evening. The school committee is very aware that we also need to be thinking in terms of fiscal year 26, 27, and 28. And so there are cumulative impacts of not having a successful override this spring, and in subsequent meetings, we will be able to preview that and have more discussions around that. So all that being said, my plan this evening is that I will alternate between people who are here in person, your questions, your feedback after Jill's presentation, with remote attendees. My plan is to go 4 people in person, 4 people remote, if there's that many who raise their hand. Please keep your questions and comments to less than 2 minutes. I will try to stick to that so we can get as many in as possible. The scope of the questions and the comments should remain within the budget. That is what we're here for this evening. I will make sure that everybody has 1 time to speak. If we still have time and there are people who want to speak again and we are going till 8 p.m., then I'm happy to take a second round of questions. So with that, I will turn it over to Superintendent Geiser.
Thank you.
Yep.
First, thank you for everybody who is here in person. I'm actually really heartened to see such a turnout. And then I know that there are many people also on Zoom. What that tells me is obviously the commitment and interest in terms of what happens with our schools, one that I certainly share, as well as I know my team here shares as well. So I appreciate your giving us the time tonight. I'm going to echo a couple things that Meg said, which is first that this is a first draft. And I anticipate this budget will go through iterations, future additional iterations based on the feedback we get tonight. And so just to know that my goal for this evening is to explain the 3 budgets we are presenting with as much clarity as possible, so that at the end, there's a greater understanding of what the budgets are, how we constructed them, and how the pieces fit together. And so with that, I'm going to be presenting, my presentation is going to be shorter than it was Tuesday night, because what I wanted to do, give an overview to allow for more time for people to give their comments and ask questions. Just a couple notes before we begin. The one thing I'm going to push on is we need an understanding of terms. I am using terms and I'm going to define them, things like level service, reallocations, reductions, and so forth. So I will define those along the way. And the reason why I will do that, because some of these terms may be defined differently by different people. I will explain the reallocations, the needed increases, improvements, and reductions, as well as impact. And a lot of that information is in the memo, which is now posted on our website. And then we will take some questions at the end. Let's go ahead and get started.
Recording in progress.
Okay. So a couple things with this particular slide. This kind of gives you a graphic of how the different budgets are relate to each other. So the starting point is what we define as.
I don't think people can see that. Can we twist? Can we move?
Let me twist the screen. But it's also.
Oh,
yeah,
the camera that's up there though.
It's okay.
Okay,
I mean,
we'll have to do the best we can.
yeah,
A little bit?
you could try maybe a little bit to.
We didn't set this meeting up.
And then maybe you can turn the camera back.
Oh, it
Yeah,
does.
okay.
He's got it.
Okay.
Sorry for closing the corner, but this is the best we can do.
Okay, so we start with the level service, and there are 3 components to the level service, and this is what I mean by how I'm defining level service. Level service is taking the level service of level services in 1 year and having a budget that will support the same level of services the next year. And as we go through the different components, I'll describe what they look like. Then we have what I'm defining as the override, which includes program restoration and improvements. And then the non-override, which includes reductions. There is a note that I want to point out here is that the override budget may also be applied to the level service budget as a label, kind of consistent with what Meg was saying, which is that if the override doesn't pass, we will be unable to have the budget that we need for a level service. So override is being applied to both the level service as well as the program improvement restoration budget, just to clarify that piece. Okay, so this is what we call the rollover. And so the rollover, one sec. That's okay. Come on in. Come on in. Okay, so the rollover, now this is, I want to distinguish between when we call rollover versus level service. So when we use the term rollover here, what this means is taking FY24 resources and rolling them into FY25. And we are seeing increases due to salary increases, the ones that we have to implement via the collective bargaining agreement, as well as inflation that is attached to things like tuitions and materials and so forth and equipment. So those two factors end up in the rollover, end up increasing the rollover from FY24 to FY25 with the same resources that we had in that were budgeted for FY24. So that's why we call it a rollover. I'll let them ask questions if they want details about that.
Sure.
Okay.
Recording in progress.
So, and then looking forward to the next one. So what happens then, once we have the rollover and we say, okay, here's what we have in FY25 by way of our resources, and here's what the new cost is going to be for those resources. Then I'm looking at, okay, what do we need and what are some areas that we can reallocate resources from? So if you look on the left side of that chart, you see 2 grade 1 teachers and 2 grade 4 teachers that we are saying that we're going to reallocate from, which basically reduce those positions. And the reason is just purely enrollment. We have lower enrollment in rising grade 1 next year and as well as rising grade 4, so we can reduce the number of sections of those grade levels. And so what we're suggesting is to reallocate over to grade 6 from those grade 4 positions, also enrollment driven because we have more students in grade 6. And then for grade 1, an ESL teacher and a reading teacher, and that's all about mandated services. So we have an increased need via both in terms of like our EL students, as well as our students in IEPs, needed staffing to meet those services, which we are required to implement. And then the other reallocation comes from this special education services salary line, which is basically helps to compensate teachers when they have to do some work outside the contractual day. We are able to lower that a bit, and in order to make room for these staffing increases, which include the 0.2s for a learning center teacher at the high school, psychologist, ESL teacher, and then adding a special ed teacher also at the high school. Again, mandated services for that reason. And then that central office to the Q non-salary accounts is basically, it had started, as you know, Chenery was 5 through 8 last year when they split it into 2. Half the account there for the non-salary accounts went to BMS, and the other half was absorbed into central office until now. We'll have grade 4 back into Q, and then we're just going to move it back into that cost center. These are just general needed increases that we are saying in order to meet net level service, we need to increase, for example, our transportation. We need to add buses related to the transition of grade 4. We need to increase our legal services because we're going to be going into contract negotiations next year. The reconfiguration move will need we'll need about $100,000 to contract out with the moving company, as well as compensate teachers for time for packing. That's all one-time cost, but we would need that for that move to happen. And then that grant GF cost share is just basically saying we have a handful of staff members, maybe more than that, a few more than that, who are supported partly by the general fund, partly by grants. And what's happening is their salaries are increasing at a faster pace than our grant allocations. Our grant allocations are pretty consistent from year to year, but those salaries are increasing. Okay, so this is a summary, and again, all of that is our level service. So we're looking at the rollover and then the reallocations, which is budget neutral, and then the needed increases, which I just talked about. So again, this is just level services, ensuring that we have the same level of service from FY24 to FY25. All right, so one of the things with this particular piece with the override, keep in mind, so the FY25 override budget is completely dependent on whether funding is available in an override scenario. So what we are doing here is saying, here are a bunch of resources that we need. And in an override scenario that allows us to make these additions, these are the additions that we would be looking to make. But of course, that depends on the revenue that's available. In this graph, you'll see it's about, I think it's like 9 FTEs that we're looking at, just to kind of go down list and explain the reason for each one. So in for the AP position at the elementary school, we currently have 1 AP at for all the elementary schools, who serves primarily Wellington and Winbrook, mostly because size and need there, but that person also works a little bit with some of the other schools. We have 1 at the Q, and then 1 at the middle school, and then 3 at the high school. The next year, when 4th grade goes up, we will have over 1,000 students at the Q, and we need more than 1 assistant principal there. So the assistant principal at the elementary school is scheduled to move up to, that position is scheduled to move up to the Q. That leaves no support at elementary, and I've been a principal before, and I can't imagine not having AP support as a principal. It's critically important for the operations of the school. And if we want our principals to be instructional leaders, then they need the AP support to help with the operational aspects of running a building. So that's why that's up there. The next one down is a wellness director. We don't have anyone in this role at the moment providing support to our health and phys ed teachers, or as well as our social work counseling department. So next year we have new standards that are coming out from the state around wellness. That's one area that I'm thinking about in terms of needing to have that support. But even just generally, if we want to have things like consistent instruction across classroom, high quality instruction, teachers collaborating, and so forth, we need someone that can help lead that work. And so that's the purpose of this particular role. One thing to note is wellness, or I should say health and phys ed used to be in the athletic department a few years ago. That was separated out, and it was never really replaced by anything. So for the past couple of years, I'm not sure the timing, it's been sort of kind of hanging out on its own. The next one is evaluation team leader at the Q. So right now we have two team chair positions at the elementary. These are special education positions who are able to coordinate everything around IEP processes and services. So what they do is they work with families, they work with staff, they kind of have a view of the service delivery in a school or department, and they're able to play a really important role in coordinating the services. We only have 2 team chairs at the elementary. We don't have any team chairs from grades 5 on up. Right now, we are relying on providing stipends to some teacher leaders to help with that work. But what we are looking to do is bring in a role at the admin level. So this is a Unit B position who will be able to lead the work, starting with the Q. So we only have the Q up there right now. My sort of long-term vision on that is to keep building that staffing up through high school, if we can. So the one piece about it being an administrator position is that person can then also do evaluations for teachers, and they can also provide support for instruction for teachers. So when you're talking about providing reading services, especially specialized reading services like OG or Wilson or Linda Boot-Bell, like that person can help with supporting those kinds of services as well, and making sure that they happen in the building. One more piece about that role is that when you're looking at using resources in a building, for example, professional aides, it happens a lot, that person can have, again, that school-wide view to see where the resources are needed so that they can be used as efficiently as possible. The next one down are substitutes. They were reduced the last spring. We want to bring some money back into the substitute line. The challenge with substitutes these days is also hiring them, because I was just talking with our substitute coordinator today, so getting people in, but if we can at least get the funding for it, that's a starting point for us, and then we work on the recruiting. Math interventionist, this is also, it's not a position in special ed, but it's completely related to special ed. When you have students in the general ed classroom who are struggling in math and they need extra support, that's where these guys come in. So they come in and provide targeted intervention for students that might be struggling with tier one, that classroom instruction, so that they can fill in any kind of conceptual gaps that might be happening with a student, so that they can go back into tier one and access that core curriculum. The more we have early intervention with roles such as interventionists, that helps to impact how much we need to rely on the IEP process and then out of district placement. So this is kind of where that whole piece starts. The next two are about building up in-district programming. This was a very big topic last spring all through the budget process, and coming in, I knew this is something that we needed to look at. I have two, these are essentially placeholder positions. We are going through a special ed review right now, contracting out with, the organization is called Rebus. And we have two retired superintendents now, and one of them used to also be a special ed director. They're doing the review with us, and I've actually asked them if we're thinking about in-district programming. We don't know what the program will be yet. That's what we're going to get hopefully from that review. But they confirm this, as far as positions, this is probably what you're going to be looking at in terms of needing to pull in staffing. Those professional staff could be a teacher. It could be, if it's more of an academic program, it could be a BCBA if it's a behavioral program. It could be a social worker if it's a more therapeutic program. So depending on the program would define what those positions look like. And then the next one down, if you've heard me at any of the PTO meetings, this is the one I keep talking about, is our math curriculum. We haven't updated it in about 10 years. And so we would be looking to bring in new, really rigorous, high quality math curriculum for our teachers, so that they, just to help impact their instruction in the classroom. It is very much needed at this point. And then the PD that goes along with it as well. Yeah. Okay, so this is a summary. When you add up the program restoration and improvements, we're at 1.05 million plus some change. And then that leads us to that override number of 67 million plus. Okay, so that's where that, again, in an override scenario, when you have.
I was just getting feedback that the folks on TV can't see that are having a hard time seeing the presentation. So I didn't know if we could make the comment to Belmont Media Center if they're able to make the way the slides appear on TV larger, just before you continue.
They can't, is it?
I think it's too
I
small.
can hear you.
Okay, so hello, Belmont Media Center.
Hello here.
I've had a report that it's difficult to see the slides.
Hi there.
I'm trying to.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So it looks like you guys are still on the title slide.
Well, it's a new title slide.
Now we're on the new slide.
Gotcha. There's not much I can do to make it bigger. It's about as big as it can be.
Sit closer to their TV.
Okay, well, I was just reporting.
Available in the document.
It's on it is online.
The documents are also online.
Yeah, you could just download them.
Okay, we gotta.
Okay.
Okay, thank you so much.
So I'm gonna pick up the pace again here, because as you can see, I get pretty excited when I think about all the, just what we can do in our schools with the staffing. So we're gonna go in the other direction now. Just go back one quick. And again, here, I just want to emphasize this idea of amount of reductions. First, anything on this slide is not, we are definitely reducing it. Absolutely not. This is all what we are looking at in terms of tiers of reduction in the event of a non-override scenario. And the amount of reductions will depend on how much of a deficit we have to make up for. So that's one thing that I'm gonna, just to keep in mind, that this is not definitely what's happening. What we came in with was, we need to have a plan if we are in a situation where we don't have the revenue to support what we need to do. So that's where we're coming from here. So what we did was, we had a methodology. If you haven't been on seen it, it is posted on our budget page. And it basically says that, here's the methodology we're going to use to make our reduction decisions. It is one that, as a school department, we developed. We needed something to go into making these really difficult decisions with, like a framework. So that's what we were using. And that's how we're presenting it today. It's not set in stone in terms of our framework, but like I said, it allowed us a starting point, again, to make these pretty challenging decisions. So just to go through this really quickly, professional development would be dropped down. And as you can see from the impact statement, it basically is just, it doesn't allow us to build the professional capacity of our staff, which is the core of our teaching and learning, right? For teachers and educators and leaders to be able to build their professional craft. Transportation would be, we would be going more towards minimal requirements, which is 2 miles between home and school. If we get to that point, if we reduce the 314 plus change, that's where we would probably end up.
Just for K6.
Just for K6, that's correct. You know, I'm sure, as it says right here, that hardship for families, especially those who rely heavily on transportation. So this is going to be, if you're talking about like equity issues, this is one big place where that hits. Extracurricular. So a lot of questions around the extracurricular. Just to kind of give you an overview, this is reducing just general fund. We do have a lot of our extracurriculars that are supported by fees. If you were to look at it just right now, straight up, it would be about half of our athletics are on the general fund. And most of our performing and fine arts are on fees, except for the theater department has more on the general fund. So if just that description would give you a picture of like what actually would get reduced. However, if we were finding ourselves in a scenario where we would contemplate this kind of reduction for extracurricular programming, we would have to do an analysis around what would happen if we increase fees, or what can we support with the fees that we have already, those kinds of things. So those are the questions that we don't yet have answers to. This is just materials and curriculum purchases, which would be deferred, technology. The one thing about this that I would say is, and this is what I was saying the other night, these are the kinds of things that sometimes it's easy to think, oh, don't worry about it, you just like reduce the materials amount. That really impacts instruction in the classroom, right? It's like, if you want teachers to provide high quality instruction in the classroom, you have to give them all the materials and supplies that they need to do that. The technology, the same thing. I think the other night I said, imagine like a smart board without the smart software, you've got a whiteboard. And so like, those are the kinds of things to be thinking about this particular area, that it would be really hard to reduce this without really impacting instruction in the classroom. So all of that, then you get to the staffing group. So I'll just kind of give a quick overview of this. In this particular group, you've got some summer staff around summer programming that would be impacted. Some leadership positions, administrative positions may be impacted. Support staff might include things like library aides, as well as some clerical staff might be impacted, hall monitors, things like that, people or roles like that. The professional staff positions, not classroom teachers, there is not a ton there because we don't have a lot of staff in that category that are not special ed or ESL. That may be some reading specialist positions that may be impacted there. And then the instructional staff, we'd be looking at reducing high school teachers, bringing us closer to minimum graduation requirements, classroom teachers at the elementary, which could impact larger class sizes, as well as possibly transferring students from school to school. So those would be more of what we would find in the staffing. And as you can see, that's a pretty big chunk of funds that would be there. So the last one is the school closure. We had a lot of discussion about this at the committee meeting in October, because originally it was I had more of a reconfiguration language in there. And when we talked about it, the idea was that, school closure, it's been a rumor out in the community, and it was like, should we at least put it out on the table as an option if it just to look at compared to other kinds of reductions. The one thing I said the other night, and this is obviously Burbank that we'd be looking at, Burbank, we were looking at it for its size as well as location. I did meet with the Burbank staff on Monday, and the one thing I said to them, as well as on Tuesday night, I'll say it again here, I feel that the Belmont community would just not let this happen. And so that's the one thing when I see it up there, I'm like, it hits me, right? And so, but again, we want to cover our bases, which is why we ended up including it in our methodology. So here's the summary. If you look on the tiers of reductions down there, you've got you can see where each tier hits in terms of the amount of reduction. The one thing I'll just note quickly is that we are at 4.5 right now. In the school committee meeting before a couple weeks ago, and the finance subcommittee meeting, we decided we would try to get a reduction up to 5 million, but we haven't gotten there yet. As you can see, it's been pretty challenging just to get up to this point, but that would be further work that we would have to do if we need to do that. I think.
Okay, thank you, Jill. So before I begin, I will just run through kind of some of the norms again. And I do want to say that although we are talking about numbers here tonight, I think that, Jill also spoke about the impact. I always want to make note that as we are talking about numbers, we're talking about people. The majority of our budget is people. There are educators. So I just please that people be respectful of the fact that when you're talking about numbers, there are people behind those numbers. And as a school committee, we're well aware of that. So I will be taking 4 people in person. When you come to the podium, please state your name. Please keep your comment or your question to under 2 minutes. And we will try to do our best to answer them if they are questions. If they are comments and opinions, we will make note of them so that the school committee can consider them in future conversations. And with that, if anybody would like to come to the podium.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, sure. Well, I'm going to start from the front. And I apologize for pointing.
Thank you. My name is Amber Moore. I have a kindergartner at Wellington and a 6th grader at Chenery. I just wanted to commend this group and thank you all for your thoughtful approach to the budget. I know it's not easy to do this, and I appreciate having you take community voices into account, especially as I watched the last budget season unfold. So knowing how hard it is for all of you, my comments are not just addressed to the school committee, but the community at large and the select board and our town representatives. I feel personally ashamed that that we as a community are not able to fund these initiatives and have already kind of are coming from a place of already having one of the lowest per pupil spendings in the area. And it's really alarming to see some of these cuts. For example, the school supply cuts, my son's teacher last year didn't have enough paper at the end of the year. So we had parents bringing in reams of paper. So I think the fat has been trimmed. And so I think, what really worries me about this non-override budget is that it fundamentally represents degradation of our structures and our systems that are in place that is going to be hard to rebuild. And I worry that the cost of having to rebuild those will be more, and that we are being very penny wise and pound foolish if we do not fund this override. I think also, as Jeff astutely pointed out on Tuesday, that the 3-year budget cycle in a child's life is incredibly impactful and could be their whole high school, their whole elementary or middle school. And so I just want to say that I agree with several points that the school committee made on Tuesday about the current budget. Although I know Superintendent Geiser put a lot of work into it, and it clearly to me just expresses a baseline need. I would like to think about being a little bit more aspirational, as Amy mentioned, and others at the last meeting, thinking about world languages, really getting appropriate class sizes, appropriate mental health and wellness, The math curriculum too, I think is a big one. All these were mentioned on Tuesday. So I would just like to encourage the school committee to think about upfront choices that might save money in the long run. So specifically the special ed program, I think was great. Really glad to see that. Wondering if there's other opportunities and if we can quantify those savings. Just 3 more quick questions. I'm wondering if there's other, or am I done?
You can ask one question.
One question. I guess I'm wondering what would be the implications of a Burbank school closure on the rest of the system? That's not totally clear to me, so I'm just curious about that. What would be the implications of the Burbank school closure on the rest of the system? And I can email my other questions.
You're welcome to answer quickly if you want, or we can take it under consideration.
Let's think.
Sure,
about it.
so
Yeah,
we'll
I don't
discuss it
know.
at a future meeting. Thanks, Amber. Sure, in the back. And how about with the red glasses on, you'll come up next so you can get ready.
Hi, good evening. My name's Georgina Lamont. I have 2 children at Wimbrook Elementary, which we love. I am not a US citizen, but I am a long-term Belmont resident. I care about Belmont deeply, and I care about our schools. I would vote for the override if I could. And this is my comment, that there are more and more Belmont parents who are non-US citizens who cannot vote in local elections to support our children's schools. So out of roughly 20,000 adults in Belmont, about 13%, which is just over 2,600 voting age adults, are non-US citizens, which, by the way, is a fantastic thing. Diversity is great for our town. It also means, though, that even if they are by definition permanent residents, like me and my husband on a green card, these 2,600 adults cannot vote in town elections on the local topics that affect all our lives. But of course, we pay whatever taxes everyone else votes on. So we have taxation without representation. And I do appreciate the irony of those words being spoken with a British accent. My point is not to be here for changing voting laws. This isn't the place. That won't happen before April. But it is to highlight that there is a growing silent cohort who are not represented in the town election results. So please just be aware that the override vote result will not be a true picture of the wishes of all Belmont residents. There will be over 2,600 voices that go unheard. On the specifics of the budget, I speak as a modern languages graduate who has lived around the world, just to ask that we do restore and improve more world languages learning in our schools. We're trying to raise broad-minded global citizens, and having language schools to communicate and connect plays just such a key part in that. And to the school committee, just thank you. The calibre of your conversations and commitment as volunteers is simply outstanding. So I may not have a vote, but I do have a voice, a shaky one tonight, and I'm happy to lend that voice and effort to help our Belmont schools and wonderful educators. So thank you for listening.
Hello, my name is Natalie Sierra. I have a daughter at Wimbrook and a daughter at the middle school. We came to Belmont about 12 years ago when our oldest was only 1. She has special needs, and at the time we were really looking for a district. We didn't know what she would need. We were looking for a district that would meet whatever it was. And when we talked to school district staff, we were just bowled over by the options that were available to us in this community and the responsiveness of the special needs staff in this community. So when I saw your draft optimistic budget, I was really pleased to see the enhancement of the special education services, because I think it's very important that those children feel fully a part of our community. Of course, the non-override budget has cuts, and some of those cuts are a bit more subtle. Increased class sizes, even that small number of cutting the reading specialists, those are real kids. And it's very short-sighted, because ultimately it's going to push those children onto IEPs, and you're obligated to fulfill that. So it maybe saves you money for a year or two, but you're spending more money down the road with horrible negative impacts to those children. So it winds up being not only short-sighted, but actually quite cruel. And I know you're having to make hard choices. And again, like the first speaker, I'm speaking to the community at large, the select board, anybody who wants to hear. So I really think we have to think about the future of our community. About 30% of our population are school-age children, and it's just horrible to think that we would fail them like that. So thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. My name is Kati Siegel. I am a mother of two students, one at the high school and one at Q. I just want to make you aware that there is a petition that has been circulating. It has garnered a lot of support, and I'm just going to read a text of that petition tonight. This petition has over 400 signatures and is gaining more interest, and this is what it reads. It's addressed to the members of the Select Board. As residents of Belmont, Mass, we urge our Select Board to use the following principles as a guide during the budget process. To select a dollar figure for the override that honors our community's core values, including a commitment to quality public education and town services. To maintain level services and allow for increases to restore essential services that have been cut and fund critical work that will save money in the long run. To continue to improve municipal government by identifying and eliminating any unnecessary duplication or inefficiency. To continue working to reduce residential taxes by increasing appropriate commercial development and reducing barriers to opening and expanding local businesses. To use every tool possible to reduce the tax burden on seniors with fixed incomes. To make strategic investments in the future of our community. And to leave our community on better financial footing in the future than it is today. So thank you, school committee members and other town leaders that are here tonight.
Hi. Good evening, fellow parents, citizens.
Online.
Oh, I was going to go 4 and 4. Go for it and then.
Sorry. No problem. So good evening, everyone. My name is Aisha Trace. I have a kindergartner who is thriving and happy in the Burbank school. But of note, I'm actually a graduate of the Belmont public school system, and I credit it tremendously with my academic and career success. I moved back to this town principally for my son to go to the Belmont public schools. I moved into the Burbank community because of what I knew it could provide for him and his unique needs. And so although I have many thoughts about, the override and the potential cuts, I just want to implore the town, the community, and everyone to keep and save Burbank School. When I walked in for the kindergarten intake, I found the most welcoming community, the most inspiring teachers and principal. And I just think that it would be a travesty to this town, to the students, to the families in that area, and to all the students who would be impacted in all the other elementary schools. So thank you.
Thank you. So I'm going to turn, there are 2 people with their hands raised online. And so Mike Crowley, I just unmuted you, I think.
Yes, thank you. Mike Crowley, former school committee member. And I do want to say that I am so thankful for the kind of discussion that's taking place on the school committee about the budget needs. And there is just no doubt that this is an exceptionally challenging year with the desperate need for an override. And I think, as some of the other folks have commented, failure to pass an override would just be devastating for our schools and ultimately for our community. But I do have one concern I want to mention, and that has to do with the YRBS data that was discussed at the school committee meeting on Tuesday. It's good news that overall we do seem to be doing better.
So Mike, if this relates to, if you're going to connect it with the budget, feel free, but I did state at the beginning that the scope of the.
It does connect to the budget. It most definitely does. Ultimately we seem to be doing a bit of a better job, but we still have just a stunning number of kids in our system who are struggling with anxiety and suicidal ideation, making suicidal plans, and I am grateful that those numbers have come down a little bit, but I think, as you know, any numbers, and they are substantial numbers, should really make us think twice about, what it is that we are doing or can do to improve the lives of these students, because we're not meeting our needs. We're not meeting their needs in the school system unless we can provide some help. And of course, nobody wants to face the possible situation of a suicide. So, I'm just asking that the school committee please think about whether we need to add additional school counselors or some other type of programming in order to help meet the needs of kids who are mental health challenged. And we've got a lot of those kids in the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Paul Gormiski, and I apologize if I mispronounced that. If you could please identify yourself when you unmute.
Hi, how's it going? Paul Gormiski, yeah, very, very good pronunciation. I have a Burbank first grader, and I'm also a town meeting member from Precinct 7. So I just had a couple brief kind of comments and then a question. So the first is just to say thank you to the school committee, as many others have said. I've also been extremely impressed with your deliberations both last year and this budget year. And then the second is really like a call to action to the community, right? Like, what agency we do have here is speaking in, open forum like this. We can also organize to support the override. And I also want to encourage anyone out there to run for town meeting and add your voice to in that way. That seeing the budget process last year is what prompted me to run in the last cycle, and I hope that other parents in the school system will do the same thing. I also wanted to, make a comment, because what a previous speaker said about representation really resonates with me. And I think what I struggle with so much hearing about these cuts is that we are asking children and our teachers, many of whom do not have any voice in this process and no representation, to bear such a huge burden. So that brings me to kind of my question. I think what I find so hard to hear about the cuts and the potential of closing a school is that it feels irreparable. And so I would like to hear, and just put a very fine point on it. I know this is a very difficult thing to discuss, but what does it mean when a school closes, right? Does that mean all of the staff are laid off? And I just worry that, we would never be able to rehire. We would never be able to regain what was lost, even if we pass an override or fix the budget in the future. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Sure. First of all, I would like to I just want to also state that the school committee had directed the superintendent to make reductions at different tiers based on assumptions about what the override would be if it didn't pass, and the amount of free cash that could be used. So there are still quite a bit of conversations going on. So again, this is a hypothetical situation that the superintendent was trying to kind of meet a guideline that the school committee had asked her to do. And if you just want to.
Yeah, that's a good question about the Burbank, what is actually the cost or what happens with that? So we did essentially cost that out a little bit. And I think you may have seen the figure at 930 something in terms of the cost. So we estimated how many staff members and would need to follow students to other schools. So that's how, so we have some reduction in staff, but we can't reduce the entire staff because we need to keep a good amount of them in order to follow the students to the other schools. The one thing with that 932 to keep in mind, that does not account for associated costs, including transportation. So if we would have to, if we were at, let's say, pretend we were at the 2 mile mark, so we would have to, any student that was 2 miles beyond the other school that they would be assigned, we would have to provide them transportation, so that would be additional cost. The other additional cost is just moving, so we would have to support the moving of teachers to the other schools as well. So that 932 isn't exactly a full straight up 932 savings. There would be some costs associated with it.
Okay, I'm gonna take, there's one other person with their hand raised, and then I will turn back to those in person. So it's Tanya Lewis, I believe.
Yes, hi. My name is Tanya Lewis. I am a high school teacher, and I just wanted to, first of all, thank you all for all of your work on what is clearly a very difficult process. And secondly, I wanted to speak to concerns that I had about the thought of reducing department directors. So I know that they probably seem like they're not very student facing. And so when you guys are evaluating cost saving measures, I just wanted to sort of add in a little bit more perspective from the inside, which is, that directors they are student facing. They're teaching a class, but in addition to teaching their class, their impact is really pretty significant. I've been teaching for about 18 years now. I think I've changed jobs 3 times, and I can say that I have been so happy teaching at Belmont High School, and a good chunk of that is due to the support that I get from the director, and I know that others in the department and in the high school and in middle schools also feel that same support. And as you guys are aware, we're at a time where we're losing teachers, and Belmont is a cutting edge community. And one of the draws and one of the things that we have to retain teachers, but also to attract teachers, is the support that comes from the directors. So some examples of things that directors do they provide curriculum resources, which if we end up cutting budget regarding professional development or other money for curriculum, becomes really essential to have them around. They help with professional development. So, in order for me to stay licensed, I have to do a certain number of PDPs every 5 years. And I've been in a system before where I largely was left to my own devices to find those opportunities, which was not the best use of my time. And so I greatly appreciate the support that Belmont offers. I get a lot of good feedback to help me grow my teaching. If I have any issues with a particular student, I can go talk with my director, and I've been surprised at how much my director knows about my students, and in addition is able to help me think and brainstorm ways to support and even just ask questions that can help. I'm sorry, am I running out of time?
Yes, if you could maybe tell one more thing and then wrap it up.
So I just wanted to say that it's probably easy to think that directors are not necessarily directly impacting students, but they really are, because they're just really helping to lighten the load on teachers. And my one last thought that I would like to share is just that, since COVID, the rate of teacher turnover has been very high. And so the directors have been key in providing support for new teachers. And I have firsthand knowledge of a new teacher who had said basically that they felt like they would not have got through that first year without having the extra support from the director. In any case, thank you very much for listening to me, and I'm sure you have a lot to think about, but I wanted to make sure that was also on your plate. Thank you.
Thank you.
There's one more.
I know, but I said I was going to turn back. I got it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Angela Carini. I have a 6th grader at the Chenery Upper Elementary School. I also have a spouse that's a green card holder. So thank you for speaking for all those people in the community who would love to vote on certain matters and can't. So I want to thank all of you for serving on the school committee. I watch most of these meetings, and I'm always so grateful to you for donating your time and effort and expertise. and making Belmont such a wonderful community to live in. If we want the Belmont Public Schools to maintain the reputation that is built over the years, then I believe we need to fully fund this now and fund the second plan, the improvement plan, investing in our future. If our math curriculum is out of date, which I've been hearing for years, then it needs investment now. If we can bring the students who are in out of district programs back into the district and the community, then we should do so and ask for the funding so that it happens now. I have a sixth grader, as many of the people in the room have, it's time moves quickly in a blink. And I worry that the next time we get an override on the ballot will be years and years, and time is precious for our kids. I also would like to encourage the world language program to be reconsidered. It's just such a critical thing, both from a language standpoint, but also cultural. There are just so many different programs that could be restored and improved. As a social worker myself, who has worked in several public schools, I was surprised to hear during the pandemic that we didn't have any support at the high school until the ARPA funds. I don't know if that's correct, but that was the impression that I got. And so grateful to those funds. I get calls all the time from community members who are asking for help finding a therapist for their kid who is in crisis. I really want to encourage that when those funds expire, that we have the money in place to keep the staff. I think the At Youth Risk Survey that you presented on Tuesday night really supports this. And for those who have never tried to find a therapist using insurance, it's not easy. And then when you try to find one that has after school hours or evening hours for all of our sports and kids involved in clubs, it's so hard. So all those kids, they need people in the building that they can talk to or at least have an assessment. So I just wanted to, I'm going to wrap up because I know I'm rambling now, but these are so important. So thank you for taking the time to listen to all of us and be so thoughtful in presenting that budget. I say go big. We get one shot.
Rachel, and then you. Yeah.
Two kids really need to go for putting.
Oh, have you had, I'm sorry, sure. Rachel, if you don't mind.
No.
Waiting a second.
By all means, I'm not leaving.
Hi, I'm Ilya Schlechter. Me and my wife have one current kindergartner, and one aspiring kindergartner at Burbank. And I just want to, stress that the school is very much worth saving. It's probably not true of every school, but in my experience, I was in many ways really impressed with Burbank, with the kind of staff's dedication, with the overall atmosphere, with how much parents are putting in when things need to be done. And I imagine all of that took a lot of time to build and put together, probably with your work, and so it would not be easy to replace if that were allowed to expire. So that's just one thing, and the other, just wanted to remind people that. So, for example, we bought our place in Belmont 3 years ago, and the schools were a big factor in that. And I imagine that is true for many people. And so, to the extent that people want Belmont to be a place where people want to move to and to have high, house values and such, the schools are, a really big part of that. And you don't want to shortchange them. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you for waiting.
No problem. There's no way I'm going to top that. But my name is Rachel Watson. I have one student at 6th grade at Q, and I have another student who's in the lab program at Butler School. I'm also the co-chair of Belmont's Special Education Parent Advisory Committee. And what I'm here to say is that As far as budgets that are penny wise and pound foolish, it's too late. We're already there. We've already been there, especially when it comes to special education. Because what we have been doing for years is any student who cannot be in a general education classroom for the majority of the day is sent out of district. We use the funds that we have in these schools, and we're required to use them to pay other schools to educate our children. So rather than increasing the funding to our schools and developing those type of programs here in Belmont, in district, we continue to pay to send them away. And not only do we pay to send them to out-of-district schools, we also have to pay for the administrative and legal wrangling that goes on behind the scenes. Nobody likes to talk about that. But when we have the situation, what we end up with is kids who are on the edge for a long time, and then parents who have lost their patience with the Belmont system and are desperate for their kids and will happily pay for legal services for attorneys to get them out. And then we end up paying that as well. It's a foolish use of our money. We need not a level service budget. We haven't had a level service for kids with moderate to higher support needs ever. We need to fund this override to a level where we can develop our own programs, keep our students here in Belmont, and spend our money wisely on programs that we know work for our students and their needs, and that could even bring students from other districts who have the same needs, rather than taking our money outside and our students outside. This is also not just an equity, last one, this is not just an equity issue in terms of students with disabilities, but also in terms of a lot of other marginalized identities. My child's lab classroom is majority minority. The students have immigrant parents who don't speak English in higher proportion. Students are Black and brown in higher proportion than our general classrooms. And the students are LGBTQIA in higher proportion than our regular classrooms. So these students are the ones that are being segregated, that are have multiple marginalized identities. It's a big financial, equity, and educational issue. And we can't solve it with level services. Thanks.
Hi, I'm Kara Moran. I have an 8th grader and 11th grader in the Belmont Public Schools. Thank you, everyone, for what you're doing. It's very inspiring to see how hard you're working, and this is not your job. Well, it's your job. I had a question about the cut to the summer staffing, which is a lot of our most vulnerable children rely on summer school for academic resource, but also for practicing social skills in the summertime. Have you quantified what the impact is to those vulnerable children of reducing the staffing for the summer program?
So we were in conversation with the Director of Student Services around that question. What we did across departments is ask the question, like, where, if we were to make reductions, where is it possible? So the one places where we didn't, obviously are not cutting into where we know we need to do mandated services in the summer, but he was definitely gave us some places where we could trim if we need to without too much impact on there. However, that said, we would need to also still keep an eye on that for the reason that you just said. So it's, if we were to reduce in that area, that was definitely something we would need to ensure that it wasn't impacting in that way. But so far, that's that from based on the information we have right now, we were able to make those reductions. It's not, and I think it's like 60,000 or something, and they have a pretty large budget for the summer, so it was a small reduction.
Thank you. And I just had a comment, which is, as a parent of a child with special needs, who I'm very grateful was able to be in the mainstream classroom, and this year, for the first time, is having his service dialed back voluntarily because he believes that he can do it. So he's going through one class without an aide at the high school. It works if we can all work together. And so prioritizing what the previous speaker said way more eloquently and in a more data-driven manner than I can. Just as a grateful parent to the Belmont schools, I really do encourage you to invest in bringing our children home. Thank you.
I'm going to take people who are online. Mr. Mongiel, could you pronounce your name correctly for me? I'm sorry.
That's okay. This is Mr. Monjo. I'm a teacher at Burbank, second grade. So you probably assume I'm just going to talk about Burbank. I love Burbank and I think it should be saved. One thing I just wanted to bring up, and I've been thinking about since I heard the news about the potential impact of the override, is just to put it out there to the town. So you have a lot of amazing educators here, people who can get a job anywhere, but don't want to move and don't want to work somewhere else. And the conversation around what might get cut, who might get cut, when and how, it affects the morale of your employees. And even if it passes, even conversations around it and what's said and what's not said, affects us deeply. There's been some things tonight I'm glad I heard, because especially from the community, it means a lot to me to hear these positive things and beliefs that people have about us, because I think that they're right. It's an incredible place. What might happen, even if it's a tier 2 cut or a tier 1 cut, is that educators will evaluate their options. And with the override in April, the way that you get a job in education is either you get it in April or you get it in August. Those are kind of the hiring seasons. So my concern is that people will prepare for potential cuts and get their name out there and their resume out there. And when they get a job, might not be April, but if it's August, it might be really hard for the town to fill those spots adequately and with a professional of anywhere close to the caliber that you already employ. So I just wanted to make you think about that, because it might not be just the people whose positions get cut who aren't here next year or aren't here the year after because of the other cuts. So people might follow friends to a new district. And the other thing to think about is just the teaching world is surprisingly small. When someone who works in Belmont describes to a principal in an interview why they're considering leaving, that story will be honest so that they can be on a good footing with their potential new employer. But that story will also be in a lot of places very quickly and in a lot of people's ears. So people who are looking for jobs might not apply to Belmont. So I just wanted to have give you a sense that the turnover might really happen, that might not be a surmountable obstacle for administration in time. And that could include full classrooms of little kids that don't have a qualified professional in front of them. What happens inside the building is we might have to have someone who's untrained, but we like them and we know them, go in there, and that's stressful for everybody involved. So especially parents and students. So I just wanted to put that out there as something to consider as the year is going on and these conversations continue. Thanks.
Heather Rubelski.
Hi, Heather Rubeski, Precinct Town Meeting Member, Precinct 7 Town Meeting Member. I agree with everything said by everyone so far, so I will not repeat them. I have a couple things to mention that have not yet been brought up. I have to follow Patrick Monjo here, so I will try to do my best. tailoring off his point, even this year we had unfilled roles this fall among our teaching staff because it is so hard to hire good teachers within the special education realm. I had a friend with a 9th grader who started the year with no special education teacher going into her first year of high school to support her. And just in October, a special education teacher at Chenery left to take a job in another town and leaving her cohort of kids without someone in charge of them. This is a real and important issue that needs to be taken into consideration. And I hope that all our educators hear us when we tell them thank you and that they know how much we value them. Our amazing staff are one of our #1 assets in this town. The things I wanted to bring up that I haven't heard mentioned are that there have been cuts in Belmont going back many years. At one point I saw a long list. 2 of the things I remember on it are that we used to actually have librarians in our elementary schools. We have no librarians. We also apparently used to teach languages much younger. We've now moved that up yet another year to start in 7th grade. These are the kinds of things that have been cut in the past, and we've never been able to bring them back. So when we talk about trying to restore things, even going 1 or 2 years back in restoration is a lot. If we go back further, we could do even more for our students. I'd also like to bring up that the literacy curriculum has not been addressed. I agree the math curriculum is in dire need. I don't argue that point. Last night we had a virtual literacy curriculum forum that Assistant Superintendent Sullivan was on, and someone asked about curriculum and the answer was, well, right now we're resource constrained. We can't do anything about it. We have what we have and we're going to do the best with what we have. Math is not the only curriculum that needs to be updated. I also believe that many of our curriculums need at least some kind of update to become more culturally responsive, which is incredibly important as our community continues to become more and more diverse. We need to represent our students and our staff, and we need it to be happening every day in every class. Finally, students need to be able to feel engaged and happy at school. And when we look at cuts to things like arts, music, athletic, languages, advanced coursework, those are the kinds of things that make students less happy, and everything starts to go downhill. Everything is connected for them. I would also point out that no one has brought up our lack of access to high quality VOTech education. When we left Minuteman, we've basically left our students without any high quality options. I personally know several families that tried to get their 9th graders into VOTech programs this year that were not able to do so. And finally-
Thank you, Heather. I do have to ask that you wrap up. It's over 3 minutes.
Yeah, last point, we haven't talked about continuing to implement all the recommendations from the equity audit that we spent extensive time on just a year ago, and that is also important. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to take 2 more hands and then I will go back to in person. So Larry Link.
Good evening. Thank you all for your presentation. Larry Link, Precinct 1. I'm also an empty nester. I moved here with no kids, not expecting to use the schools, but knowing full well how good they were. Had my kids been able to come here first, instead of where they started, they would have had a much better launch. Oh, I value the schools, but I value everything in Belmont. We need to make the right investments in our K through 12 residents. These are the youngest people. They are our future. As just one example, to think about diminishing the language programs for the young people who will be leaders in a global world is just ridiculous. I mainly want to make my comment tonight to shift the camera to the rest of the room. I had to watch from home, but neither Belmont Media nor Zoom is able to show the large crowd that I suspect is there. And it might also be good to quantify how many people are participating by Zoom. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Yes, there are 169 people right now on Zoom. We had up to 173 on Tuesday night, and I I'm not sure. I know.
Over 70.
Over 70, yeah. Okay, thank you. You're in person. So I'm going to take one more remote and then I'll turn back to in person. Susan Burgess Cox.
So, hi, I'm Susan Burgess Cox. I have twins who are in the 8th grade at the middle school. What I want to speak to is the building, the reconfiguration of the district, and the impact and the short-sightedness of closing a school. One of the purposes of the reconfiguration was not only to help with enrollment, but also to help with building schools that will accommodate a variety of things, and that curriculum is changing, and there's a need for more project-based learning. Getting rid of a school and taking away that space and putting students in these schools, 3 schools, just is not accommodating to that vision. We had a whole group who had not even maybe 6 years ago, who developed a vision for the district with this new configuration. And now we're going to be taking that away if there's the possibility of. So I would suggest that just be taken off the table completely, especially given the superintendent's comment about not that being something that would be sort of the last thing that you would want to do. Well, if that's the case, and they were in a district that just built a new middle and high school, people just paid and their taxes are being increased to accommodate what was seen as growing enrollment, and maybe that's not occurring anymore. But I think it's very short-sighted to think that that's not going to possibly happen again. And taking away building in the past, Belmont has had 6 public schools. And 2 of those, one burned down and the other one burned out a few times, but was rebuilt and is now the senior center. So taking away another school is just, it doesn't make sense. Especially, again, given the vision that was put in place, the new building that was put up there, the fact that we had to put modular units at the Burbank and use those and all of this occurred within the last 10 years. So here we are, and we're going to be decreasing the space once again. I mean, part of the reason I've talked to people about using the space in the elementary schools for science and for reading and to be creative about using that new space. And that's going to be taken away if the Burbank school is closed. So I just think that things need to be reconsidered beyond that, don't fit in with the idea of closing a school. And I understand, and I don't, that things are tight, and I don't necessarily agree with some of the other things that are going to be cut if there isn't an override. But I think we have to look beyond just the fact of an override, but the fact that the taxpayers are now going to be asked to pay more after they voted on approving a high school that increased their taxes, a rink, a library.
You could wrap up, Susan. That's 3.5 minutes.
Okay, and now an override that's going to take a capital asset out of use. That's another thing, is that it's a capital asset of the district that's not going to be in use. So that's it.
Can I say something?
Yes.
I just want to clarify something. I don't think any of the school committee members or the district is talking or want to do any of these cuts. This is in case of a no override. That's what we'll find ourselves into. Most people might know this already, but just to repeat, what we're facing in fiscal year 25 is a $7 million deficit. In fiscal year 26, another $7.5 million deficit. If we don't pass an override next year or the following year, we're looking at a $14 million deficit. Even if we plug in all the free cash in the first year, you're still looking at cutting $9 million from the overall budget. So I think it's very important that what this conversation be towards is understanding the impact and the limitations of the amount of cuts that we can do to a system like Belmont Public School. You get to 3.5 million of cuts, and now you'll be forced to be thinking about closing a school. Burbank is my school. My 2 kids went to that school. It's the last thing that I want. I love Burbank. But this is the painful cuts that we're talking about. I don't think any of us is supporting this, but we want to be able to contextualize at what point do we destabilize the system? At what point does the pain become bigger? And if it doesn't get cut, if we don't get an override in this coming year and the next next year as well, the impact is monstrous. So I just want to make sure this is clear.
Okay, I'll turn back to in-person right here. And then...
Good job.
So my name's Ed Barker. I'm the father of a kindergartner. I'm also a member of town meeting. And I'm not going to repeat what everybody else has said, except in 2 cases. One is, I want to encourage, first of all, I am deeply appreciative to Dr. Geiser and the committee for the careful and thoughtful way you guys have been approaching this question and the emphasis on making investments in the case of investment and presumably cuts if they're necessary in the areas that are going to actually have a positive impact for the district. Spending money to save money, reallocating resources to get better impact or better outcomes is really very evident in the approach that you're taking. 2 things. I want to, first off, ask you to aim high in the scenario where we do get an override. There's a lot here that I've learned tonight about what used to be in the district that isn't any longer. Relatively speaking, new to the school system. And so I want to ask you guys to aim high, because we all know that process is a trading process of getting to the actual number of what the override's going to be. And I would rather have them cut out a bunch of stuff that you sort of threw in there that you didn't really want, but in order to protect the stuff that you really do. So I want to encourage you to, first of all, think about an assistant principal in every school.
Yes.
Right? Why not? Think about foreign languages starting at 6th grade or maybe 4th grade. I'll admit my bias. There was a foreign language instructor for many years, so I'm biased, of course. But I guess my point is aim high, ask for big things, and see what comes of it. The second thing is that I want to ask all of us in this room to channel the anxiety, the frustration, the concern that we're all feeling about what would happen in the event of no override into the process of getting an override passed. It's relevant for this conversation because we've all identified exactly what will be the problems if we have to have a cut. And yet, if we don't make it happen, we're forcing this group of people to make impossible choices. So I'm going to ask you all to join me when the time comes in being active in that process. And I say thanks to the committee.
Hi, I'm Jenna Judge. I'm a 1st grade teacher at the Wellington. I have been teaching in this district since 2015. And I would like to talk to you all today about the importance of small class sizes and to urge you to take another look at our level service budget and to not cut those 1st grade teacher positions. So I'm a teacher at Wellington. As I said, last year there were 5 of us 1st grade teachers. This year there are 4. And the current proposed budget would have us at 3 next year. The reason that we're saying that this is okay is because our kindergarten enrollment is low, and it's okay. We can take 14 kindergarten classes and we can put them in 12 1st grade classes, and we'll probably still be at 22 or 23. I'm here to tell you 23 is not a number to strive for. At the Wellington School, we have 22 and 23 students, and we are not able to serve our students the way that we would like to. Other districts seem to have a better understanding of this. There are only 5 public school districts in the entire state of Massachusetts whose median class size is higher than ours in Belmont. 5. So I would be happy if anyone ever emailed me, jjudge@belmontschools.net. I would love to share the abundant amount of research that there is on class size. What I would like to do now, however, is to speak about the negative impact that I see these large classes having on the students that are in front of me every day. 22 or 23 first graders with one adult in the classroom means that there are fewer opportunities for student-teacher interaction. Teachers and students need these interactions. They need this positive relationship. It's essential for students to feel belonging and to be engaged and motivated to learn. If you were to come into my classroom during any transition time, you would find me swarmed by about 4 to 10 first graders who are desperate to take that 1 minute of my time and to connect with me because they don't feel like they get those opportunities enough. They want to tell you about their grandparents' birthday party and their new Pokemon card and their bearded dragon who is not feeling well. And we as teachers want to know these things because to know these things is to know our children. Large class sizes also have a really big impact on academics. We are not able to know our students and their strengths and their areas of challenge as quickly and as deeply as is needed. We understand the importance of intervening early when children are struggling. In order to do that, we need to be identifying those students, and we cannot do that when there are so many students that we need to know. This allows us to not have enough opportunities to differentiate instruction for our students. We can see them in small groups fewer times. That means that students who need to learn something in a different way or some extra time to review something, their needs are not being met. And students who on the other end of the spectrum need a challenge, their needs are not being met as well. And I know I'm almost at my time, but I will finish up. Yep. All of this, if you think about a first grade classroom with one teacher and 23 students, the productive buzz of a first grade classroom where all students are actively engaged and learning and on task, it's a lot. And for some students, it's really distracting. And for some students, those students who have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, those students who are on the autism spectrum, those students who have sensory processing challenges, for those students, 23 students, it is just too much. And what we see is those students shut down or those students start to engage in really challenging behaviors. So I would just like to please implore you, please take another look at that 24-25 level service budget. Please do not cut first grade teachers. We need small class sizes. Thank you.
I'll take 2 more in person and then I'm gonna turn back to online. Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll take both of you. You can just decide who goes first.
Hi, my name is Scott. I was also a green card holder, but now I'm a citizen. I have 2 children at Burbank, one of whom would be impacted in that scenario, which I understand is the last resort, but obviously would hate to see that. And I also would hate to see any of the other cuts that have been discussed in a wonderful presentation here. My question, though, is I think everybody in this room, including on this board, is for funding the schools. We all want to see the override passed. My question is, who are the people that are deciding that the budget for the schools is held flat and that the school will have to bear the brunt of increasing inflation as opposed to other departments in the town?
Right, so it wouldn't just be the schools in the case of a non-override, so the town would also have, they are also presenting their level services, their override and their non-override budget. The final decision, truth be told, at the end is made by town meeting, but the select board will be the ones to decide on the amount of the override that goes on the ballot.
And so my follow-up question is, how do we as citizens influence that decision to preserve or even grow funding for the schools despite rising costs and shrinking revenue.
Right. Well, hopefully we're a body that will communicate to them what we're hearing this evening and advocate for a budget. But also you are welcome to email them. You're welcome to attend their meetings as well. But we will certainly be, what we are hearing is influencing us and influencing the messaging that we provide to them as well.
So I hope that what you've heard tonight provides you with yet more reasons why the school budget shouldn't be cut or held flat. And I also would implore everybody to listen to that statement and support this committee by going to the people that are holding them to what I think we all agree are unwise constraints. So thank you.
And I do want to just, I mean, I will state that I do think that all the select board members are also, they care deeply about the schools and they are also trying to be aware of the finances for the whole town and the schools. So they are in a difficult position as well.
I recognize that, but I think if schools are a priority for us as citizens, then we need to make that clear to them. Thank you.
Can I come back to you?
Good evening. My name is Lindsay Kalmakis. I'm a parent with children in the Belmont Public Schools, a 6th grader at Chenery, a 4th grader at Wellington, and a preschooler and future Wellington student. I'm also in my 2nd year as PTO co-president at Wellington Elementary, and I have volunteered in the PTO in the Belmont schools for the past 7 years. Tonight, I'd like to share my perspective on my volunteer experience as a PTO president in Belmont. But before I do, I'd like to mention that my testimonial represents a shared experience and reality across the parent-teacher organizations and parent-teacher associations in the Belmont Public Schools. That assertion is based on 12 months of meeting regularly with all presidents at the PTO and A's, all of whom have a clear view into how the schools are operating today. Speaking to my experience, being PTO president is not at all what I expected it would be when I said yes to serving this role. My understanding that was typically a parent-teacher organization drove enrichment opportunities, enhanced experience for our students and community above and beyond their core educational experience. But in reality, our PTOs and A's do not just support bake sales and book fairs. We are not the icing on the cake of our children's education. Our organizations are relied on to provide key ingredients that make that cake. On any given day, the Belmont Public School PTOs and A's field requests from our respective schools, staff, and administration that have amounted to hundreds of thousands of dollars, pulled from our funds raised from community donations, from a wide range of reasons that I'd like to highlight across 4 categories. Infrastructure, like gym flooring, bookcases, playground wood chips, repainting the blacktop. Education, software for learning, magazines, the Jumpstart program, library books, and classroom books for curriculum lessons. 3rd, community support, a stock of snacks so that no child experiences food insecurity, and funds that are provided to help families meet their basic needs. And 4 is supplies, which we've discussed. Reimbursement money that we give to teachers that goes towards very essential supplies, chairs, rugs, books to enrich their libraries. On Tuesday evening, Superintendent Geiser acknowledged this testament for how the PTOs and A's are generating funding from our communities to give back to the schools, and how relying on donations for basic classroom and education expenses is not sustainable for a strong future for the Belmont Public Schools. We wholeheartedly agree. Our students in our town deserve the service and support so that a volunteer-run organization like the PTO is not the solution for essential funding needs. The PTO would struggle to fill the gap of the town budget at its current levels, and it certainly won't come close to being able to make up for the potential reductions our school system will face without additional funds provided by the town. Again, this model is not sustainable. Without passing an override, the quality of the education of our schools can provide our kids will be considerably diminished, and that will be deeply felt by our whole community. Parents and volunteers like me will continue to support our school system as much as we can. And we embrace a vision of the PTO continuing to be a great partner to the Belmont Public Schools and to be the icing on the cake to give all our kids a world-class educational experience. But there is no way the PTO will have the capacity to be an essential ingredient in that experience. We need the entire Belmont community support to properly fund our schools. Thank you.
I just wanted to remind people of 3 things that are happening there are a number of meetings one of the questions that came out earlier to what can we do. There are a number of meetings that are important that we have shared. I think it's on the school website. There are important meetings that are happening next month on November 30th, on December 20th, and on January 5th. And it's on the various summits, for budget summits, select board meetings, etc. Important discussions, important decisions will be made about the size of the budget, the size of the override. And I would say volunteer with the override committees, educate your neighbors, talk and share your information not only with us, but with everybody else in the community who cares, the select board, the warrant committee, your town meeting members.
I'm going back to remote. Courtney Eldridge.
Hi, can you guys hear us?
Yes.
Perfect. Go ahead, buddy.
Hi, I'm Tyler Eldridge. I am Courtney Eldridge's son. She is the president of the PTA at Butler, and currently I'm in 5th grade at Chenery Upper Elementary School. And I just want to speak that I would definitely encourage putting back the language classes like Spanish and French, etc. for Chenery Upper Elementary School and any other grades. Thank you.
Nina Pang.
This is Nina Pang. I am a parent at Burbank School with a 1st grader. And my daughter has thoroughly loved her time there. She's built a fantastic community, closeness to her teachers. Sorry, hang on a second. And also friends. But what I want to comment on is that, and I want to just speak for a personal story, which is that I'm a single parent. You know, I got divorced when my child was very young, and having Burbank be the place where she finds to be home from 8:40 to 2:50 in the time that she transitions between myself and my co-parent is crucial to her. And I just want to say that and voice that there are, you know, just humanize what the impact would be if you were to close Burbank. The impact you would be having on a child like mine, which does not have the luxury of sleeping in the same bed every night, but the one place in between these transitions between two parents is Burbank. That is how important the school is to us. Thank you.
I just want to note it's 8:08. How many people here are still looking to make a comment? I'm happy to take some. Okay, great. So I'll start over there. The two. Yes, you guys can decide.
Hello, I'm John Kuderbach. I'm the parent of a 1st grader at Burbank Elementary. Me and my wife have been living here for 8 years so far, and this morning we became a proud homeowner in this town. So, hey. It's all more concerning though now that we're hearing about this potential. So I do want to highlight that the reason that most people come here is for the schools. I think it's echoed by most people that have said things here. My daughter does go to Burbank, and I think one thing I want to highlight here as well is that I think it's unnecessarily cruel to have called out Burbank specifically for the parents, for the students, and for the educators there. I think it would have been much better to have said that school closures would need to happen. But it's created a lot of anxiety among the parents. It's created a lot of unrest just in the school in general. So that's all I have to say. So I appreciate it.
My name is Samantha Thu, and I actually came here tonight not thinking I was going to speak, and I was just going to listen to everyone, but just hearing everyone really inspired me to come up. So I am a parent of a Burbank second grader. We're fortunate to have Patrick Monjo as my daughter's amazing teacher. And hopefully we also have a kindergartner, if Burbank is still around, who will attend next fall. I also am a Belmont High School graduate. I went through the entire system. I am a Burbank graduate, and my kindergarten teacher is still there, Colleen Cox. And I know firsthand what the beauty of Belmont and the school system can do, because I've thrived and I have a successful career and I went to college, and I really credit Belmont for all of those things. And so it really pained me to see, just like everyone said, Burbank's name on that chopping block. It's just, it cuts super deep. And I know that it's not something that you guys wanted to do, but I think the community, like our heart would just be so damaged. I have lived in Belmont for 95% of my life. I left for a few years to go to college. I always knew I was going to come back. And I always knew that I wanted my children to go to Belmont. Ask my husband. He's from another town in Massachusetts. It was never an option to go to another town. He had no say in the matter. It was going to be Belmont or bust. And if I was fortunate enough, which I have been, it's been in Burbank. So I really, really hope that we don't get to the point where we have to cut. I never in a million years would have ever imagined that would ever be on the chopping block. And it terrifies me that something that's so near to dear to my heart and my community would be gone just because of like all these things over the years that have just like degraded over time, and like you don't realize the cumulative impact of it. I mean, I went to the old high school when, you know, it was in really bad disrepair. I think it had been last built in 1972, and there weren't doors on the girls' bathrooms. It was bad. And so like to see the town trying to make these improvements, it does feel a little too late, but I really just, everything you can do to save Burbank, I really would appreciate it. Thank you.
People who haven't spoken before, like speaking.
I'll be really quick. I'm Amelia Kantrovitz. I have a 6th grader and an 8th grader. I moved here 4 years ago, and the only reason I live in Belmont is for the schools. In fact, I had never even been to Belmont, knew nothing about it except that the schools here are excellent. So I'm obviously concerned, as are so many people here. What I don't think that people realize is like how closely the reputation of the town is tied to the schools. That people are going to leave, they're not going to move here, and of course the property values, the values of all of our homes will go down. It's all just so interconnected. And I understand how hard this job is, how expensive it is to run the schools. It is pretty much the entire budget for the town. But I just want to say that it is worth it. Fully funding the schools is worth it. I am not alone in thinking that. And I hope that the community at large will see the value in fully funding the schools and supporting the kids in Belmont.
Hi, I'm Aaron Picklingus. I'm a town meeting member from Precinct 6. I have a 6th grader and I have a 9th grader. I agree with so much of what has been said tonight, and I just wanted to say, if you don't like the look of these cuts, please vote to pass the override. And if you don't like the look of the level services budget, please advocate, as many people have tonight, for more. My daughter's favorite class in 6th grade was Spanish. My son is in 6th grade, no Spanish. My daughter just missed getting to do cello in 3rd grade. She had to wait till 4th grade. These little things are these little cuts, and there's so much more. But if you want to support these superhuman efforts of teachers who I see here, who I know, and teachers I don't know who I'm sure are just as superhuman, like advocate. But most importantly, it's so hot in here because there's so many of us and there's so many online. But most of the people who vote are not here, and most of the people who vote are not online. So just as important as voting yourself, please tell all of the people that you know who care about our schools and our municipal services that are going to see the same kind of cuts we're talking about tonight, just as dramatic, just as upsetting, if we don't pass them right. Tell them to advocate for what they want and tell them to vote on the election day. It's so important. Thank you.
So I'm going to take the two people, Roger and Cheng, who have their hands raised remote, and then I'll come back if there are 4 additional people who would like to make a comment here. So Roger Fusa.
Good evening, everyone. Roger Fusa, town meeting member, precinct 8. We have 11th grader in the school system and 8th grader, and we are very appreciative of the schools. The teachers have made superhuman efforts, including I just like to say, superhuman efforts include the work of this committee and the superintendent and the administration. And I do have a question. It may have come up already in this part of this session. Has there been discussion about the Belmont After School Enrichment Collaborative, and specifically what would happen to their operations that are now at Burbank?
What is it? The basic after school.
That has not yet entered into our conversation at that point. I think we would probably answer that a little bit later.
A quick follow-up about that. In terms of everything that the school system has provided, my wife and I have found that basic has been very important in our kids' success. It provides executive function coaching for our daughter, after school tutoring, extracurricular activities, and so involving basic in these discussions I think is important. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger.
And Chang Zong.
Hello, you guys hear me?
I can, yes.
Oh, yeah. So my name is Cheng Zhong. So I have been living in Belmont for almost 10 years. I have 3 girls. So we really love the Belmont High school system. We started from Butler, and then we say about 3 years ago, we moved to Burbank district. And you know where I stand, basically, definitely for the override. But I do want to ask the community, say the committee members, and also maybe the whole audience. Right now, the question or the problem we're having is like, okay, we need money, but we don't have that much money. We need to do the override. And how exactly we can do this with a little bit better efficiency? What I mean, the money probably is there. We're going to do the override. And then when that money comes in, how can we use the money more wisely in specific areas, as many people have been talking about, and make sure first, definitely no school shut down. None of the schools are going to be shut down, but how we can use the same resource to make it more efficient. Let me just make an analogy. So I'm a runner. You know, if you really want to run nicely, you need to take in a lot of calorie, energy, right? And also you have to make sure you run efficiently. So the money we're taking in is just like all the calories you're taking in. But if you want to run far and run fast, you have to make sure you run efficiently. So my question is like, how can we make sure we run our schools more efficiently, and also the community services? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Sarah Boyle. I have 4 kids in Belmont School District, an 11th grader at the high school, an 8th grader at the middle school, a 6th grader at the Q, and a 4th grader at Winbrook. I'm also serving as a PTA co-president this year. We lived in Belmont a number of years ago. Our oldest actually went to kindergarten in Butler, and then we moved away for a time and boomeranged back on purpose to this very town because of the community and the school district specifically. So it has been it's been super frustrating to watch in the years past, over the years, things getting cut, like language and things like that. And I know that you're in a terrible position, and I appreciate all of the work that you're doing. My voice right now is more of like a record I appreciate all the town meeting members who are tuning in, and hopefully our select board, though I know there are lots of meetings all the time, are tuning in, because my comment to them is, I hope that this is unfortunately is sadly another wake-up call that we need better community development to help fund our town. We can't be on the back of the taxpayer, for years to come, because we keep coming up to this position where we need more money, and all of us aren't made of money. So I just want to get on record of saying that. And I do appreciate all the work that you're doing, but I hope that the town meeting people who are here, and I appreciate them being here, I hope that we can all just kind of voice that we just really need to look at what we can do in this town to bring more money in. And that's all. But.
Is there anybody who hasn't spoken yet? Okay, if you'd like to make one more comment, and then this will be the last one, and then I will take, there is one more person remote, and I'll take that.
Sure, thank you. So Aisha Trace, I spoke previously, but there was one last comment that I really wanted to make. So just again, in terms of Burbank School, US News and World Report this week came out with a report of the top 10 elementary and middle schools in Massachusetts. And I think it's extremely important to note that 2 of our 4 elementary schools were noted in the top 10, and Burbank was number 6. I think that we all know that our schools are excellent. We all have investment in these schools, but I think that external validation just really underscores the fact that we need to do what we can as a community to save this school and to continue this excellence. Thank you.
All right, so the last comment this evening, please know that our email is sc@belmontschools.net. Please, you can feel free to send your comments to us as well as the select board. And so I will take this last comment. James's iPhone, if you could please identify yourself, James.
Sure. This is Jim Smith, and I have a son in the queue and a daughter in Wellington. And honestly, a lot of my comments are similar, but just wanted to echo what a lot of other people were saying in the room. Is definitely want to acknowledge the cuts that we heard about are awful, but I also just wanted to thank the superintendent and the school committee for bringing them forward, because it's the awareness of what's going to happen that I think also creates motivation for action. And similar to what a lot of other people said, I think everyone that's listening, if you can impact 10 or 15 other people outside of those who are listening, that's what's really going to change the vote. And that's what's going to be powerful. Also, in terms of getting the override number, just wanted to echo what others have said in terms of aiming high. I think pushing the budget conversation up in terms of the override number is probably going to be driven from the school more than some of the other departments in the town. And I think that's just something to kind of acknowledge sort of the power that the school is going to have in that budget conversation. And then third, probably need to start thinking about per pupil spending in terms of communication with the wider audience. And that's something that Belmont's per pupil spending is much less than other districts. And so I think that's going to translate to the taxpayer audience more so than potentially other aspects. So it's just something else to kind of keep in mind as we're thinking about going out and motivating others to vote in a positive way for the override. And then really my last is more of a question that I just didn't understand is there any way to kind of make the override a longer term venture so that we're not back in 3 or 4 years, but can we think about this from a longer period of time, or is that just not within our ability in terms of how the larger rules of Belmont are structured? Thank you.
Thank you, Jim. I will briefly just say that, and thank you for your ideas, first of all. So what we were showing here tonight is just fiscal year 25, but the warrant committee, select board, and school committee are all thinking multi-year right now. It's just that it's still November, and Superintendent Geiser is working hard to present a multi-year to us, and I think that there'll be more discussion about that at both the warrant committee as well as the select board, who are also concerned about or have the concern about being able to think about what it means for the next few years and how to make sure that the number that we put in the override will allow us to operate at the level that we all want to over the next few years. So that being said, the next meeting of the school committee is a joint meeting with the select board, the warrant committee, and our capital committee, and that is on November 30th. And so that is a public meeting, and there will be more discussion about that. And Dr. Geiser will be presenting her override budget. And our town administrator, Patrice Garvin, will be presenting the town's override budget at that meeting. I don't know if they'll have public comment, but they may. So with that,
Can I say something?
oh, yes, go for it.
So I just wanted to provide just a quick closing remark. First of all, thank you all for all of your comments. You know, I was busy taking notes, and there were definitely several that I'm like, oh, I have to, you know, think about some things there too. So that was very helpful to hear the feedback. I also want to say, so I don't know if folks in the room know or even on Zoom, but I am a resident of Belmont. So I am, as I sit here as a superintendent, when I hear your comments, I'm also putting my resident hat on as well. So, and I can, I know what you're saying. Do you know what I mean? I hear everything that you're saying and have a lot of the same perspectives and feelings. And a couple of the comments about the burden on the taxpayers is very real. And I don't want to leave tonight without acknowledging that is, and there are some people in our community where it is a much greater hardship than perhaps other people. So that's something, as we move forward with these conversations and we talk about needing to invest in our schools, we also have to at least acknowledge that's very real for a lot of people in the town. So I just want to put that out there. And with that, again, thank you for your time tonight.
Yes, thank you very much. And adjourn the school committee at 8:27 p.m.
And
All in favor?
I.
Thank you.